So we see a lot of this spiritual warfare that is taking place in the country. In Nepal, they say that most of the majority of the Christians are converted. The people have converted to Christianity because of they have got healed from sickness and also got healed from possessions. Okay, they have been delivered from that. So deliverance and healing is the primary reason for people converting to Christianity.
This is Out of the Margins podcast.
The podcast space, especially in the Christian world, is saturated by Western voices. But if we want a diversity of thought to face the future together, we need to step back and hear voices from out of the margins.
Here, we will be offering insights from experiences and perspectives from the majority world. My name is Edgar.
And I'm Simon.
And on each episode, we will be bringing to you our conversations with pastors, leaders, and scholars from the majority world.
This podcast is brought to you by Young Langham, Australia.
Ephesians 6:12 states that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces of evil. These words of the Bible are supposed to be universal. They should apply to every single Christian around the world. However, depending on the context that you find yourself in, these words might be not as relevant to you. In a secular society, the supernatural is not something that people pay attention much to. It might even make people chuckle to the thought of someone being demon-possessed, for example, because it feels out of touch. But don't take my word for granted. Here's Simon.
So I'm going to be honest, Edgar, I'm a little bit nervous about the subject of spiritual reality in the world today. There are two big things that influence my understanding of the world. The first is that as a Westerner, I really do come from a materialist and a skeptical perspective. And so that makes me struggle with the concept of spiritual reality. And the second thing is that I come from the position of a reformed evangelical who, for worse, I think sometimes, dismisses everything involved with the Pentecostal movement out of hand. So because of some of the more pernicious aspects of the Pentecostal movement, I think sometimes we don't want to confront spiritual reality because we think it's too involved with Pentecostalism. But I think I need to be really, really open to this. Because first of all, if we dismiss this out of hand, we dismiss the experiences of our majority world brothers and sisters. Very real experiences that they have. And second, we really dismiss the reality and worldview presented by Scripture. And so I think it's really important that I hear more. And I'm really looking forward to learning more from you and from our guests today, Edgar.
I am excited too. I'll be interviewing Karuna from Nepal and Winny from Hong Kong. And we are talking about spiritual warfare.
I'm Karuna Sharma, now living in Kathmandu.
Karuna is a Langham scholar pursuing her PhD at the Oxford Center for Mission Studies.
And I'm married. I have 2 children, 2 boys. One is 9-year-old and the other one is 2 years, just turned 2 last week. So me and my husband Ashish, we both serve in Nepal Theological College. My husband is from India and I'm a Nepali living in Nepal. So my parents, they are also from theological background. My father also has done his doctorate studies in religion, and we are kind of, are more interested in biblical studies. So in fact, I was born and brought up in a Christian family, but my father, he was my father who accepted Christ at the age of 15. During that time, he says that there were only 500 people all over Nepal as a Christian. So he is one of the early Christians of the country.
Nepal is a country where majority of the population is Hindu. According to Wikipedia, 81.19% of the population is Hindu. This is the highest percentage of Hindus in any other country in the world. Also from the trustworthy Wikipedia, only 1.4% of the population in Nepal is Christian. By the way, if you don't trust Wikipedia, well, just trust Karuna. Continue.
Like in Nepal, I think some of people also know that it is a Hindu-dominating country. So say, till 2007, it was a Hindu-dominated country. It was a Hindu kingdom in the world, only Hindu kingdom in the world. So there's a lot of influence of Hinduism in the country. Like we have about 81% of Hindus, then Buddhist and animist religion or traditionalist are majority in the country.
See, I told you.
So the minor religions are very few. So because of that, there's a lot of, ancestor worship, a lot of spirit worship, a lot of, the whole belief of, traditional healers or witch doctors. And, those things are existing in the country. And because the religion is, even the culture, Nepali culture, some of the Nepali cultures are very much, grounded in the religious beliefs. Okay, so the belief system, the spiritual world is of our country is a very much deeply, seen by the Hindu beliefs and traditional systems in the country. Like I was telling that there is a lot of, a lot of traditional healers, a lot of ancestor worship that takes place. So the family has their own ancestor, their god, family god. And they believe that, that they have to please the family god. They should not go against their family god. They should not go against their ancestral worship that is taking place. So in Nepal, we have a famous saying that if there is 30 million people, then there are 300 million gods.
Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. There's this belief that there are around 330 million gods. This is an hyperbolic figure, which is to make the point that the Hindu pantheon contains literally hundreds and hundreds of different deities, and they are believed to be all around.
So everything is God. Like the sun is God, the nature is God, tree is God, river is God. And also the aspect of his God is because they have a fear. Like, for example, they have a fear of that river. And if they start worshipping the river, then the river is, able to protect them.
In Hinduism, the understanding is that the gods are to be appeased. And people see themselves to be subject to the whims of the gods. So these gods are not interested in the good of the people so much as to be pleased. And so it's a task of people to find out what the gods want and how to make them happy.
For them to be afraid means that the gods and goddesses have power, and they can destroy their life. They can bring punishment in their life, right? So being afraid means like having a fear for protection, right? So if you are fearful, if you do not do harm the gods and goddesses, if you please them, then there is a kind of a safety that you will have. You would be safe, you would be protected. You won't be attacked by them. Even though there are like three supreme gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, they say it, but there are many gods and goddesses that they worship. So another thing in Nepal, what you find is that even people who are Buddhist, they also celebrate the Hindu festivals. So there is a mixture of Hinduism and Buddhism, in some community. They worship Buddha, and they also worship the Hindu gods and goddesses. So they're not just only Buddha, but also have worship and then follow the Hindu gods and goddesses.
This worldview sees the gods and spiritual attacks as the ultimate cause of life's problems. So, to be free from such problems and struggles, one needs to neutralize these spiritual attacks. So, It's not uncommon to call upon the witch doctor to diagnose the source of the problem and to provide a way out.
Yeah, sometimes what they feel is like if they have been like certain situations that they go through, like challenges that they go through, then they feel maybe it's a punishment from God. Maybe, God is doing it because they are not following the way. So mainly as we look into like different religions, there is fear of being attacked. And in order to do that, there is, pleasing to. So even like people, they go to the traditional healers and, they say that they have been into this bondage. They feel burdened. They feel this sickness is there for so many years and they are not able to get healed. And there is a lot of rituals done on that, a lot of things done on that in order to release them from that, or in order to have a good life.
And so, in the midst of this society where Hinduism is the main religion and where people are seeking witch doctors and traditional healers to solve their problems, we need to ask ourselves this question: how is Christianity, how is the Lord Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, working in this context?
So we see a lot of this spiritual warfare that is taking place in the country, and many people who have in Nepal, they say that most of the majority of the Christians are converted. The people have converted to Christianity because of they have got healed from sickness and also got healed from possessions. Okay, they have been delivered from that. So deliverance and healing is the primary reason for people converting to Christianity, because they found a kind of, being released, being free, and from the bondages, from the practices that was taking place, and those things that was there, which was not helping them to release. So Christianity also in Nepal is one of the causes of people converting to this religion, is because of this healing and deliverance that has been taking place. We have been, from our childhood, we have been hearing people, sharing their own stories of the struggles or the growth that happened in Christianity since 1950s. And because there has been stories of people, listening to stories of people, we have got to know that people had been in real struggle. They had been in physically, sick for a long time, going to different traditional healers, witchcrafters, witch doctors, and going to hospitals, and they were not healed in any of those places. And in some cases, even the traditional healers have said that, okay, now you have not got healed, so now you go to the church and you will be healed. So these people come to the church and they are healed. And not just them, but the family has converted. The family have come to Christ. And in some cases, even the society, the community where they live have come to faith. So because of that, there have been a rapid growth in the country. So the government census of 2001 to 2011 says that there has been 265% of growth in Christianity.
Back home in Mexico, I can think of some stories where people have been delivered and healed. So I can relate to this topic and to these stories that Karuna is sharing. In fact, one of my brothers converted to Christianity after seeing a demon-possessed person being delivered quite powerfully by God through a pastor. So I am aware that for me, this topic I'm comfortable with. And I am also aware that for some listeners, perhaps if you're listening from Australia, for example, this topic might make you feel uncomfortable. And that's okay. This is exactly what we're trying to do here in this podcast, to show you how God is at work and how spiritual warfare is waged in a perhaps more tangible way in different parts of the world.
Recently, there was an incident that an old lady was brought to a church. And she was sick from a long, long time. And she went to a lot of hospitals, a lot of traditional healers, places, and then she was not healed. And then one traditional healer said that you have not, you have done so much and still you are facing this. So you go to church and try. So she came to church and she was delivered in the church. And she is a very active member in the church, and she was sharing a testimony that how for the last many years she was been into this warfare, and then she has been delivered and been healed completely, and now how she is living transformative life. So those are the stories that we hear even today. So it's not just in the past, in the time when the Christianity started, but even today, I mean, when we go to different churches, we see people being, breaking their chains of those bondages, being healed, a demon coming out, and then, when we are, casting out those demons, we see that. A small incident that happened just near to the place where we live. I mean, in our community, we used to always have a prayer fellowship. And there was a particular family who lived very nearby to the place where we served. And this family, when we started the worship in the place, this family used, there was a lot of problems that was going on in this family. And one day, one of the elder brother of that family came and requested us to come and pray for that family. Because in Nepal, what happens is that people are very much free to call us to pray if they get in need. So there's a kind of openness towards that. So this family, they called us, and the elder brother called us, and they said that, why don't you come and pray? So when we went there, I mean, a few of our students, and we went there to pray. And then there was a strong, bondage that they had, the struggles that they had been going through as a family. And then in that family, the younger brother also had passed away. Father and mother had passed away. And this family was struggling a lot. And then we started praying for this family, and there was a lot of deliverance that was taking place in this family. There were 4 brothers and sisters. And after that, with a lot of prayer, and we even invited them to our worship center, they started coming and praying, and they got delivered. And now this family is living a very good Christian life. All 4 of them have accepted Christ. The girl has been married in a Christian family, and the brothers and sister is having a good life. And what the elder brother said was that if we had not accepted Christ, if we had not known about Christ, then maybe we all would have died.
Right, and the small incident. Something to understand about this healing and deliverance taking place is that people see God's power over the many gods. Similar to the story in Exodus when God brought the plagues to Egypt to show his strength and how more powerful he was over the gods of Egypt. So in Nepal, when someone is being delivered, this is understood within this context of the Hindu pantheon. And it does not go unnoticed that Jesus Christ has power and that he in fact is Lord over all.
Things that it was, affecting them. It was, really attacking them is now released. That has been cast out, that had been delivered, and they feel a new life, and that struggle is gone. Because what I understand, even the traditional healer, when they pray for, they also believe in healing. Okay, the traditional healer also believe in healing, but their healing is mainly to calm the spirit. Their healing is mainly to appease the spirit and calm them, but the spirit has not left them. Right? So the spirit will not trouble them because of the sacrifices that they have done. There's a lot of sacrifices that they have to make. The healer will say, you bring this, especially in the worship, there's a lot of sacrifice. But the demon is not really cast out from them. It is inside within them, but that is, made silent so that it won't trouble them. Okay, so again, after maybe few months, few years, again the demon, the evil spirit started, again, there is a lot of, again there's need, and then there is again sacrifice done, and then again there is calm. But in Christianity, what I believe is that the demon is not made calm, but the demon is cast out. The person is delivered completely. So then there is a new life in that person. And I have seen people, having that experience, that transformation, complete healing, and being a new person. So those things that had been affecting them, those bondages that had been affecting them, has been released. The chains has been broken, right? There's no more chain.
This might not be your experience with spiritual warfare, and Karuna is also aware of that. So she shared some last words to the Western Church.
One thing is that I would really encourage the Western countries to really understand that this is real, and this is happening, right? People are facing spiritual warfares, and people are being delivered from that also, from the bondages of many things that they had been facing in the past. And you hear life testimonies even today of how people being released and then being transformed and having a new life. So it is real, and I believe that the Western churches should not deny this aspect. Rather, they should understand that there is spiritual encounters taking place, and then the church has to be, some churches, I'm not saying all the churches deny that. Some churches might deny that those aspects now. But what I always see is that many missionaries, many Western people, they come to Nepal. And when they see these things happening in Nepal, for some it has even been a life-changing event also. I mean, they had not seen that before, and when they see this happening in Nepal, and when they experience that in the churches that they see, in the community that they see, I have heard many of my friends saying that we have never seen this kind of things before. It's really happening, and some of them even say that, the New Testament, early church things are happening in the country. Maybe not. Maybe the whole idea of spiritual warfare, and then things that are taking place in the Asian countries. I mean, especially in South Asian, or especially in Nepal. When I'm talking about Nepal, I mean these things are happening, and what I feel is that the world needs to know. And now what is happening is that the New Age movement, the accepting of a lot of ritual aspects of life, like yoga, and then the whole idea of Indian gurus, and then bringing the in the university level especially, right? It is really changing people's perspective, changing people's understanding. So I think those things also have to be understood, that whether it is culture or whether it is religiously rooted. Because sometimes we just listen it as a culture, we just listen it as a meditation, like for example about the aspect of yoga and other things that is happening. Sometimes it's whether it is really only a meditation thing to you, for your mindfulness or those things, or whether there is a deeply rooted religious aspect in that. I think that has to be really understood by the Western countries. And even in the university level, especially the younger generations, right? So even in Nepal also, sometimes people have difficulty in really differentiating between culture and religion, right? Because it's so much intertwined together that we have to really, put lenses and then see whether this is religion or whether this is culture. So I think really understanding that is important, and being mindful of that is important. And there is spiritual warfare, and there is healing and deliverance and new life that people are experiencing in the country of Nepal.
Let's pause there, because, drum roll please, tea story time. Let's find out how Karuna and Winnie drink their tea.
The thing is that we Nepali people enjoy drinking tea more than coffee. So tea is like, if you go to anybody's house, they offer you tea, and especially with a milk tea, and also masala tea, usually a masala tea. So we put a lot of spices in that, and then, not just pour milk and then serve, but then boil milk with the water, pour some spices on that, put some spices, put sugar, and then tea leaves, and just let the aroma come out of and then serve the tea. So that's usually done, even in the rural setting of Kathmandu. But now, because of this tea bag that has come in, like many people prefer to drink in the city, prefer to use tea bags. It's easy, especially for black tea.
Tea bags downgrading tea. Huh. I didn't see that coming. Let's find out now how Winnie drinks her tea.
I come from Hong Kong, and I think I'm quite affected by the British culture. So in Hong Kong, we drink tea with milk, but the tea is the tea is very different. It's not the Earl Grey tea, but we have a much stronger and blended tea leaves in Hong Kong. So we will cut it into very fine texture and blend it. And then together we put eggshell in it. And then hot water and then, make our milk. We won't use fresh milk, but we use distilled milk. Yeah, so it is a very strong taste, and it keeps you awake for a whole day.
How about sugar?
Yeah, we put sugar. We put sugar. It's upon your preference. You can have like 2 or 3 teaspoons of sugar. For me, I just put half.
Eggshell in a tea. I just had to Google this. So here's what I found. Here's the headline. If you love eggs and you love art, surely you will love making and eating Chinese tea eggs. Huh. Promising. Well, I like eggs. So according to this website, goldenmoontea.com, the eggshell is actually the most important part of the tea because it helps to remove the bitterness of the tea, and while adding the silk-like texture that is mandatory in any decent milk tea. So there you go. I'll be keen to try. Now let's listen to the conversation with Winnie about spiritual warfare in Hong Kong.
Hello, everybody. My name is Winnie. I'm from Hong Kong. And
Winnie is also a Langham scholar, studying her PhD at the Oxford Center for Mission Studies.
I've been missionary with my husband, working in Japan since 2014. While time flies, it has been nearly 5 years. And we have a passion to serve in the Japanese church, not in the urban area, but in the rural area, like the countryside, far apart in the inland area. And now we are serving in Hokkaido, northern part in Hokkaido.
Folk religion is prevalent in Hong Kong. Buddhist practices and ancestral worship are a staple in this context. What that means is that they are not so focused on organized religion with doctrines and creeds as we understand in Christianity, but they are more focused on practices and rituals, and the worldview of the spiritual dimension being part of the daily life.
As you all may know, that Hong Kong is a metropolitan and is an international city. But I have to say that the understanding of spiritual world in Hong Kong is also very influenced by Buddhism. It's deeply embedded in the thinking, particularly in my generation. It's like the spiritual warfare is living side by side in our life. Let me give you one example that I experienced in my childhood. So my parents lived with my grandmom when I was small, but because of certain issues, my parents need to find another place to live urgently. So they happened to find a haunted house. Because it was at that time, yes, a haunted house with a ghost. Because at that time, it was such an urgent, like they need to find a place urgently. And the neighbors told them, well, there is a place available, but somebody died there before. And always something strange happened in that house. But because my parents have no choice, and we need to live in that house. But something strange then happened. Like, in the old days, the television set was so big. So I was a very small child, like 1 year old. I was not very strong to pull the huge television set, but the television set was just so happened to fall onto my head. And then my parents carried me to the hospital, and surprisingly, I was okay, nothing bad. You see, I look smart. I can talk to you like normal. So that is one of the strange things happening in that house. And another thing is that every night, my elder brother will have a stomachache every night in the midnight. Yes, he has been going to hospital, but the doctor said, well, nothing, he's okay, nothing strange with him. So until then, my parents were told that, well, you need to worship the idol, a certain idol. And then they did it. And afterwards, it seems that the spirit has gone and peaceful life could be maintained. So that is one of the things that very normal, like we experience that.
Winnie explains that this was of common knowledge in the neighborhood, that there was a spirit living in that house. And so, when strange things started to happen, the obvious explanation, obviously, was that the spirit was the one who pushed the TV. The spirit was causing Winnie's older brother to have the stomach ache. It was the obvious answer.
Ancestor worship in Hong Kong, we consider our ancestor partly as gods and partly as somebody we respect as a family. So in one sense, we'll pray to our ancestor, hoping that they will protect the family and our generations and the generations. And on the other hand, we show our love and respect and our remembrance to our ancestor. So we also will provide food, provide the things they like when they are alive. It's just like the Mexican, right?
In Mexico, we celebrate what is known as El Día de los Muertos, or in English, the Day of the Dead. And this celebration is all about the dead family members. During this short period of time, 24 hours, it is believed that the soul of the deceased relative returns to the living world to feast and to have a family reunion, basically. And so the family treats the dead as honored guests. They prepare the favorite food and put up some photos to remember the dead, and they have this, what is called ofrendas, where they pull all this, the food and the photos. If you have watched the movie James Bond Spectre, there is this scene at the beginning of the movie where there is a huge parade in Mexico City celebrating the Day of the Dead. That's just not the way it is, I swear. The way it happens is that family put the ofrendas at their homes, at the tombs in the cemetery. And the whole event is about family, and the family eat together, and they also invite neighbors and friends to feast together. And by the way, I think that this also plays into the worldview that we have, where there is this blur line between the physical world and the spiritual. They're more like merge.
And we'll talk to them. We'll tell them, well, the recent report of our family, what we're looking forward to, hoping that they will grant to us, this kind of silly talk. Yeah, so when becoming Christians, we need to be aware that we cut off the God worship being our ancestor and God, we cut out that. But we still need to remain and respect as a Christians that we love our ancestor. We still have connection and relationship with them. As a Christian, we can still love our ancestor and show our respect. So even if we visit a tomb or like pray to our ancestor, we're just like talking to them with the family. So we need to respect that. In our Asian culture, it's not worship, but it's a connection with our ancestor. That is very important.
Another aspect of the spiritual landscape in Hong Kong is harmony. Things being in the right place. There is this energy or cosmic current, chi, that if follow, you will live a good life, a harmonious and prosperous life.
Well, if talking about spiritual thing, I think we need to admit that we are a modern city on one hand, but we also believe that we are controlled by the spiritual world. Like if we don't do things properly or in the correct way, we'll have bad luck. Like we believe in feng shui. So I guess you know what is feng shui. Like like for businessmen and for particular for those who work in the construction industry, they believe strongly in feng shui. So they need to put things like even the decoration in the office properly so that to ensure that they will have a prosperous business and safety in the construction. So that is something that we are like afraid of if we don't do our things properly. Like for me, myself, as I mentioned that my parents live in a haunted house. And because after they worship the idols and the family seems to be very living peacefully, so they became very superstitious. So for me, I also become very superstitious. So I went to temple, I worship idols, or like I make the paper stars in a jar, and then before I took examination, I would pray to the jar or stars, and then pray for my good results of the examination. Those kind of things. So it's such strange thinking that affecting me to invite spirit in my life, in myself. So because as I said, spirits are so close to us in our life. So if I'm from a very superstitious family, so naturally I would think that, well, praying to ancestors, praying to idols, praying to gods is normal, like to ask for protection, to ask for good prospect. It's very different from the West, and naturally they will think about Jesus. Naturally they will go to church. But because I have such kind of options, I will follow my parents' options, like going to the temple, the Buddhist temple.
So, Winnie, can you please tell us when and how you converted to Christianity?
Well, my conversion story is also very related to the spiritual warfare. As I said, my parents are very superstitious. They will offer sacrifice in the festivals. So in one festival, when my father was preparing the sacrifice, he accidentally cut his finger. It was a big accident for us as a family. Then I start, at that time I was a primary student, I think, yeah. So I think, well, if that God really protect my family, and we have been offering sacrifice to this God, but if he protect our family, such accident will not be happened, shouldn't happen. So that is the incident that led me to think of who should be the real God. What is the real God? What is a loving God that I should put my belief on? So that is the incident that for me to start thinking and seeking about Christianity. And I have a friend in my school who is a Christian, and she started to invite me to church, to her fellowship, and then Bible study. And then afterwards, I became a Christian when I was in high school.
So, could you notice any differences then between the idols and the God of the Bible?
Yeah, that is a very different. Because at my age, at that time, I have been thinking of who is the creator, who created the world. Isn't not the God that I have been worshipping, the ancestor that I have been worshipping. That is one thing. And only Christianity tell me who is the creator. And the other thing is that Jesus, for his unfailing love, yeah, I can pray to him and I can talk to him. It's not like the gods that I have been worshipping in my childhood, who I only offer things to him, and I couldn't talk to him, no response from him. So that is very different. That led me to experience that Jesus is a living God, that I can communicate as a human and God. We can communicate. It's not like a dead ancestor, dead idol. So that experience is very different.
Winnie says that because of these spiritual practices and family background, when someone converts to Christianity, the pastors, they need to know what are the connections with the idols and gods so that they can make sure that there is no bondage with these spirits?
Like before somebody, the believers, be baptized, will take a course. And at the end of the course, the pastor will ask, have you ever been submitted to the spirits or certain religion? I think this kind of question will be asked by pastor in the Western world because they haven't, it's hard for them to imagine that. But for us in Asian culture, even in Hong Kong as an international city, we need to admit that we have this tradition. Like for the children, when they are weak and they are sick in the childhood, and we are told to drink certain water that are mixed with the incense to the gods, sacrifice to the gods, and then for the ash and mix it with the water, and we will drink it and we'll be healthy. And some of the children will be submitting to certain idols and gods. And when they grow up and they decided to become Christians, it doesn't necessarily mean that those spirits or those gods are not inside their life. So before the baptism, the pastors will ask, do you have such kind of experience, or have you been submitted to those spirits or gods? If so, the pastor will need to do something about that, like for prayer, to cast off the demons, to cast off the spirits. So these are the special things that the church need to deal with. And the other thing is that pastor do something for us, like, as I mentioned, for ancestors worship, we have like an altar in our house to worship the gods and to worship our ancestors. So for those who have been like worshiping these kind of things for a long time, and when they become a Christian and they need to get rid of that, the pastors need to first clarify the faith of that young Christians, and then asking for their determination to get rid of the altar. And then on that spot, they need to break that altar and that spot, so that they see that now you have made a decision and the determination, and the whole altar need to be broken into pieces and then throw it away to get rid of it. Otherwise, the spirits will still stay in the house, and it's not good for them to have a mix of those two religions, Christianity and spirit worship. This really proves that God is mighty in changing people's life. My mom's also bear a lot of difficulties and afflictions. But when she see that how her daughter has changed her life with joy, I think that is a powerful testimony for her to see this is a living God and is a mighty God that can change people. It's not like the idols.
This spiritual struggle transcends cultures. And while here we focus on this particular context of Nepal and Hong Kong, where there are hundreds of gods and ancestral worship, and therefore a spiritual warfare looks like in a particular way. Still, I hope that you won't go away thinking that this kind of spiritual warfare only happens in contexts like this, but that you'll realize that idols are everywhere. In a context like in the West, those idols might look like money, productivity, or a comfortable life. But anything that tries to pull us away from God, from knowing God, all of those are still idols. So I invite you to keep reflecting on your own life, on how spiritual warfare is waged.
Thanks, Edgar. I think that's really important to recognize. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that the concept of spiritual warfare and the reality of the existence of the spiritual world and its impact on our physical world here is that every conversation that I've had about it has been primarily academic. So it's been a debate about whether cessationism is a good biblical principle, whether things happen in certain churches. But really, for me, it's been something along the lines of an intellectual discussion that I've had. But what this has really helped me to realize is that for a lot of people, this is a very tangible reality. That spiritual warfare is something that causes people pain and suffering and hardship. And so I think it behooves us as Western skeptics to just be open to people's struggles, because ultimately it's a very real experience. And so to love people well is to hear their stories and to trust their experiences and to share with them and work through them as they experience very real pain and hardship. So that's what I'm going to do, taking this away. I'm still struggling with these concepts, but I want to be open and loving to our brothers and sisters in the majority world, but here in our own neighborhoods too, as we all experience spiritual warfare in different ways.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode. If you found this episode insightful, please don't forget to subscribe and share it with friends and families so that others can know about the podcast.
So the next episode will actually really be a great connection to this current episode. So we've talked about animism today. We've talked about people's struggles with working with people who have Buddhist beliefs. We are going to be talking about how do we interact as Christians with people from other faiths. So look forward to that. Start thinking about some of the struggles and challenges you have here in the West, and some of the struggles and challenges we might hear from people in the majority world.
We'll see you next time.